Now, in this part of the video, we will discuss about New Testament, Matthew's chapter number 9. This is the most important chapter of the New Testament because here we get the glimpse of the real intention of Jesus Christ. Here we see that he is basically organizing a rebellion of Jewish people against the Roman occupation of their land. Because we see here that he is disrupting the revenue collection which is taking place, and he is disrupting that, disturbing the people, telling them that you stop collecting the tax and instead follow me, because a kingdom far better than this earthly kingdom is coming. That is the kingdom of heaven, whose Lord is God and whose representative is myself. And he has already created the background with his trusted followers who were witness to his miracles like curing diseases as worse as leprosy and curing diseases which takes very long time to heal, like paralysis, by mere touch of his hand. So these all miracles were actually never happened, but it was the propaganda created by his trusted followers and his very much trusted cousin brother John. So let us start from the first part of this chapter. Jesus forgives and heals a paralyzed man. Jesus stepped into a boat, crossed over, and came to his own town. Some men brought to him a paralyzed man lying on a mat. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the man, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." That means whatever the person was suffering, it is because of his sin. And the only one who can alleviate the effect of sin, or who can take one's sin, is the Lord or the representative of Lord. And therefore Jesus, by way of doing this favor to that person, is assuring and reaffirming the fact in front of the public, in front of his followers, that he is indeed the representative of the Lord. At this, some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, "This fellow is blaspheming." Blaspheming, why they are telling? Because this person is claiming to be God, or somewhat related to God, because only God can do that. God is the only person authorized to forgive the sins according to the Jewish principles. Then, knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, "Why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Which is easier, to say your sins are forgiven, or to say get up and walk? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the paralyzed man, "Get up and take your mat and go home." Then the man got up and went home. When the crowd saw this, they were filled with awe, and they praised God who had given such authority to men. In order to calm down the Jewish Pharisees, perhaps, he has told them that, "Don't worry, I am on this earth, in front of you, I am the Son of Man, but Son of Man has been given the authority to forgive the sin, and therefore, or thereby, assisting to recover from the diseases like paralysis." Now, second part is the most important part. It is the central part of this chapter. which represents the intent of Jesus Christ. When Jesus saw that on behalf of Roman Emperor, Jewish people, his own brothers, are collecting taxes from the helpless public, so he told them to revolt. He told them there is no need to pay taxes, which is ultimately going to the foreign government, to the governor appointed by the foreign government, the Roman government. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. He must have been a tax collecting clerk, perhaps. Follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. So Matthew stopped collecting the tax. He perhaps told to the people that there is no need to pay the taxes, and he went along with the Jesus Christ. This was the start of the rebellion against the Roman emperor. Perhaps this was the reason why Jesus was finally crucified. He was declared a robber. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with the tax collectors and sinners?" The purpose of organizing these tax collectors and other clerks who were employed by the Roman emperor is that he was there. He wants to convince to them that there is an opportunity to throw this foreign domination if you follow me, if you follow my principles. So we will organize and we will make our own kingdom. That will be the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of heaven which is promised for the people of Israel in the Old Testament. So that is the purpose for which he was convincing all those peoples who were hitherto partisan of the Roman government system. So, but the common people, definitely they were not happy with these tax collectors and clerks, and that's for they are, of course, their priests, which were called Pharisees. They are asking, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call righteous but sinners." He is telling that he is supporting them, he is convincing them because they are misguided. And only the misguided person needs a guide, not the other way around. That is what has been inferred here. So now coming to the next part, Jesus questioned about fasting. When the John's disciples, his cousin's disciples, came and asked him, "And what is that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" On this, Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them and they will fast." He is telling that this is a good time. This is a good time because I am here and my disciples are with me, so there is no need to mourn. There is no need to fast, because fasting is done only when there is some grief. "No one sew a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do people pour new wine into old wine skins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wine skins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wine skins, and both are preserved." So he is telling that this is the time to revolt against the Roman government. This is the time to revolt against some traditions which were there in the Jewish people. So you forget all that, you forget and forsake even your parents and come with me. Now, we will see later that he is telling this also. So he is telling that this is the new order, this is the new law which I am giving to you. So you come with me and shed your old ideas, because if you are possessed with old ideas, then you cannot accept the new ideas. For example, in other words, if you have some prejudice, then it is very difficult for you to accept the new idea. So he is telling that you get rid of all the prejudice whichever is there in your mind, and only then you will be able to accept, you will be able to appreciate whatever I am telling. For example, if a person has not taken bath, he is very dirty, then he will not put on new clothes. He will be happy with the old clothes which he is wearing. But after he has taken a bath, it will be very difficult for him to put on the same cloth which he was wearing before he has taken the bath. So after he has taken the bath, he will definitely go for the new clothes. So that is what he is telling. If you have not taken bath, you are quite content with the old cloth. But if you have taken bath, it is very much awkward that if you are again donning the same clothes. And he is giving analogous examples of the a combination of unshrunk cloth of an old garment with a new garment which is of new cloth. And another example is given is that of new wine, old bottle, and new wine, new bottle. So normally the old wine is kept in old bottles and new wine is kept in new bottles. Otherwise what happens, that bottle will be torn and all the wine will run out and wasted. Now some more miracles. Jesus raises a dead girl and heals a sick woman. While he was saying this, the synagogue leader came and kneeled before him and said, "My daughter has just died, but come and put your hand on her and she will live. Jesus got up and went with him, and so did his disciples. Just then a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned and saw her. "Take her, daughter," he said. "Your faith has healed you." And the woman was healed at the moment. When Jesus entered the synagogue teacher's house and saw the noisy crowd and people playing pipes, he said, "Go away, the girl is not dead but asleep." But they laughed at him. After the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took the girl by hand, and she got up. News of this spread through all the region. We know today that this is all completely false. If a person is dead, he can be resuscitated, but it has to be done through other means, by giving artificial oxygen, pumping artificial oxygen in the lungs deliberately, and trying to revive the dead person who is dead immediately. And in the case of girl, we see that this girl has just died, so there was a possibility that she could be revived, but not simply by touching. So this is simply a chicanery which Jesus did and which his followers are doing even now. They are bringing a person who is dead or who is paralyzed, bringing him on the cot, and then the priest, the father, is sprinkling the holy water, and the person is seen to be as if he was sleeping. He become awake. So that is the same thing is happening now in most part of Africa. In one of the cases in church, one person was brought in the cart, and then in the Africa, and then one person came, and he was atheist. He came inside the church and knocked that person with his kick. The person who was in the cot, who was paralyzed. Immediately the person woke up. So this atheist, the kick of that atheist was as effective as the healing hand of Jesus Christ. So you are understanding what is happening at that now and what was happening at that time. So this is a biggest fraud. The Christianity is the biggest fraud which the mankind has brought to this earth, and because of which the number of innocent persons killed, tortured, murdered, kidnapped is much more than because of Islam. Now another part, this part is Jesus is again doing another miracle after miracle. He is healing the blind and the mute. As Jesus went on from there, two blind men followed him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he had summoned indoors, the blind men came to him, and he asked them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" "Yes, Lord," they replied. Then he touched their eyes and said, "According to your word, let it be done to you." And their sights were restored. Jesus warned them sternly, "See that no one knows about this." But they went out and spread the news about him all over the region. Why Jesus is telling that you don't tell anybody? We have already seen that previously we have seen that Jesus warns that other people should see, because we see in the same this 9th chapter, the verse number 7 and 8, Then the man got up and went home. When the crowd saw this, they have filled with awe and they praised the God. Why Jesus didn't do these things clandestinely? Why didn't Jesus tell this paralyzed man that you come alone with me and I will cure you? And after curing you, he would have said that please don't tell to anybody. Here he is doing it in public. But here in the verse number 29, he is curing the person, 29 and 30 and 31, curing the person by touching his hand, touching his eyes with his hand, and then the person is cured, and then he's telling that please do not spread this news, but he is spreading. So this also shows the hypocrisy of Jesus Christ. At times he is doing it in public, at times he is doing it secretly, because it is easier for a paralyzed man to get up and walk, but it is impossible for a blind man to be cured, because you can feel that a person is paralyzed, but you cannot feel if a person is blind. So that's why these things is done in secret. While they were going out, a man who was demon possessed and could not talk about was brought to Jesus. And when the demon was driven out, the man who had been mute spoke. The crowd was amazed and said, nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel. A mute man was able to talk, and the cause of his muteness was that he was demon possessed. This is a greatest superstition which Jesus is promoting. Jesus is endorsing, yes, because it was demon which occupied the conscious, the mind and the body of the person. That's why he was mute, and he drove out the demon, and that helped the man to speak. What kind of scientific basis, what kind of scientific path Jesus is propagating through this? He is basically skirting and scuffling all kind of scientific progress, all kind of medical progress by these things. We know that there is no demon. We know that there can be other reasons for muteness, but definitely it cannot be because it is the person is possessed by demon. But he has done it. But the Pharisees said, it is by the prince of demons that he drives out demons. Then Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into this harvest field. It is also a very, very sinister hidden meaning here. He means that there are a lot of people who are fools, who can believe on his miracles and who can follow him. So he is telling his disciples to go to all the directions and make more and more disciples, more and more converts. And he is sowing the seed of proselytization here. So with this I end.